Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
We are back to Putin's Russia today and thereabouts, essentially because such exciting quote unquote things happen in Russia. This is stuff straight out of the days of the Cold War. For example, use of poison for assassinating people you don't like. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with the story of Alexei Navalny, the 44-year-old Russian dissident, journalist, whistleblower and politician who's been challenging Putin and who's been saying, let's kick out the thieves, etc., etc. So he had gone to Siberia, to Novosibirsk in Siberia. He took great care with his travel because he was worried about what happens to him. So he came to Tomsk, took a flight from Tomsk. Even in Tomsk, his staff took a bunch of rooms in a hotel, many more than there were people, so nobody would know which room he was in. After all that care, he made one mistake. On his way out from Tomsk at the airport, he stopped at something called Vienna coffee shop and bought a cup of tea. As soon as he drank that tea, some trouble started and flight was leaving. He went to the flight. Flight had not gone very far when it looked like he was in a great distress. So flight was diverted to a town called Omsk, where he was taken out and taken to the intensive care unit of a hospital there. Now initially the doctors and others said this looks like a case of poisoning, but immediately, as it often happens, they changed the story. They said no, it doesn't look like poisoning and that our tests show it's not poisoning. Also, many plants surfaced on official media saying that Navalny had had too much to drink the previous day and that he had a drinking problem. Now, Navalny's staffs tell you that that is not true. So it did look like he will not survive. His wife, whose name is Yulia, she came in from Moscow. She wanted to meet him. The hospital wouldn't let her meet him, saying that, how do we know you are his wife? Bring us the marriage certificate. So she made an appeal to Putin, she made an appeal to the world, pressure picked up, so she was allowed to meet her husband. And she again got more evidence that this was a case of poisoning. By this time, European powers, especially France, Macron, and Germany, Angela Merkel, they both intervened and they said he should be moved out to Germany. America also spoke out. There was a tweet issued by Pompeo. So the Western powers got together and he was then flown out in a private aircraft that was paid for by some people through donations. So he was taken to Germany, to Berlin, to what is called as Charité Hospital. We sometimes talk about it to pick up some research on coronavirus from there. Now there the tests showed that definitely he had been poisoned, and in fact the poison that it's been identified to be is probably something called, its action is cholinesterase inhibitor. What that means is that it shuts down your nervous system and kill you very quickly. He's lucky that he got brought to the hospital early and then to Berlin, and obviously it does look like that after all this international pressure, Putin also thought that this was going to go too far, so he let him go. Now the hospital is saying that he is in medically induced coma. He is being treated with atropine, which is a well-known antidote for cholinesterase inhibitors, but also for nerve gas. So he is being given atropine and other things. His coma is not natural, it's induced, medically induced coma, and doctors say right now it looks like that he will make it. Now, who is Navalny and why would he be such a thorn in Putin's side? Navalny is just 44. He runs a group called Anti-Corruption Foundation, remember, a bit like Anna Hazare's India Against Corruption. So he has been barred from appearing on state media, so he works through social media, YouTube, etc. Has a humongous following, is not afraid of anybody. How unafraid he is? He's been jailed 13 times and yet he is carrying on with his campaign. Now, I have a quote from John Herbst of Eurasia Center at Atlantic Council. who gives us some insight into why Putin may have wanted to take this kind of drastic action against Navalny right now. And he says the answer lies in Khabarovsk and Minsk. Now, Khabarovsk is a city on the easternmost corner of Russia. So, it's a Siberian city. That city has had big popular demonstrations against its governor and also against excessive interference by the federal government in how Khabarovsk is administered. So, Navalny had gone there to talk and to campaign there. There's an election coming up in that region. That's when he said that we have to make sure that all the thieves and crooks are thrown out. And Minsk is the capital of Belarus. I told you that we'll talk about Russia and thereabouts. So, Russia essentially a little bit about Belarus also, because in Minsk there have been massive demonstrations since the last elections, which a lot of people believe were rigged by the leader called Lukashenko. Now, Lukashenko, I don't know how good a title is that, but Lukashenko is now seen to be the only surviving dictator in Europe. He goes, Alexander Lukashenko, he goes 26 years back. He's ruled Belarus, a country of about 1 crore people, for 26 years, and a country we know very little about and we talk very little about. It's also a country that Russia sees as its pocket borough. So, Russia is very possessive of Belarus and also Ukraine, because look at the map of Russia and look at where Belarus is located. After Belarus, there is Poland, and then there are the 3 Baltic states, that is Lithuania, Estonia and Latvia. All these are now members of NATO. So, Belarus in a way is Putin's buffer between NATO and him. He cannot let Belarus go the Western way, and the young people in Belarus seem to be very inclined towards the West. That's what all the polls are saying. So, this is what was done. Belarus is on fire. Putin is worried, because if this happens in Belarus, then there are enough people in Russia also, led by Navalny, who think that election in which he just got a mandate was also fixed. So, he is afraid that this fire will then come into Moscow, and he doesn't want that. That's why he is trying very hard to put down the trouble in Belarus. He has not yet intervened there, but he has let it be known that in case Belarus comes under attack from any power, essentially NATO, then Russia will intervene. Now, NATO may be a pale shadow of itself in Trump's times, but NATO is still a force. So, for Putin, it's very important that Belarus stays the way it is, and for that, he has to control people like Navalny, because you can't have trouble in Khabarovsk at one end and Belarus at the other with NATO powers and EU members watching from the other side. In fact, even when he intervened in Ukraine, there were peace talks with Ukraine. Those talks were held in Minsk, in Belarus, and Lukashenko had hosted those talks. So, he is the last of the great dictators of Europe, and he is not about to give up. Now, what is this business of killing people who you don't like and also killing them by poison? So, there is a couple of articles I'll share with you. One is by Yana Goshkovskaya, who's a political scientist working on Russia, and this is an article in The Guardian where she suggests that it's not just Putin. In fact, there's a deep state besides Putin which carries out these activities. And she reminds us that Navalny earlier was doused in 2017, doused with a chemical dye. In fact, he lost most of the sight in one of his eyes. He also knows that activist Vladimir Kara-Murza, he was poisoned twice, 2015 and 2017. Then Anna Politovskaya, an investigative journalist. She was poisoned in 2004, once again while boarding a flight, just like Navalny. She survived, but a couple of years later, she was assassinated in her apartment complex. So this is Putin's system seems to be जो हमसे टकराएगा चूर चूर हो जाएगा. Then there is the assassination of Nemtsov. Nemtsov was deputy prime minister under Yeltsin, and he was a critic of Kremlin now. 2015 he was killed outside the Kremlin, and government said he was killed by hired killers. What can we do? But his family believes that those hired killers were nothing but people sent by Ramzan Kadyrov, who's the head of the Chechen Republic and very much a Putin loyalist. So basically, he was given a supari on Nemtsov. There is also the case of a journalist called Ivan Golukov, who was charged, investigative journalist, who was charged with possessing illegal drugs. Now in Russia, acquittals are just about 0.25%. I think 0.25% are allowed to go so that the system doesn't look like a full sham. But he, for some reason, also because of a lot of international pressure, got acquitted. But he had a charge that could have made him spend all his life in jail or maybe executed. Now, since it's Russia, there is always the romance of the Cold War. So I'll tell you some of that. It's the sixth poisoning in 5 years, sixth poisoning of people Putin doesn't like. There is also an article that I will share with you by David Kramer, who's senior fellow at Florida International University, who says over the years, prominent Russian dissidents, opposition figures, journalists and spies have been assassinated, usually by the use of poison. So Luke Harding, who is a well-known Russia scholar who wrote a book called A Very Expensive Poison, the definitive story of the murder of Litvinenko. Now Litvinenko was also a dissident. He was killed, he was the first one to be killed using radioactive polonium, and he was at that point in England. So he was waiting for a train or a bus when he was killed. Then you have the story of the lab, poison lab, that Lenin set up in 1921. And a lot of people who've written about KGB have said that KGB had decided that if you wanted to kill somebody, poison was the best instrument. So there is a quote from Pavel Sudoplatov, who was a former spy chief under Stalin, who says that. And then see what happened in 1959, and I'm sure some of you know these stories. 1959, Ukrainian nationalist Stephen Banda, he was killed with a cyanide spray gun wrapped in a newspaper. So he died. In 1979, Bulgaria dissident Georgy Markov, he was killed while he was waiting for a bus at Waterloo Bridge by a poison-tipped umbrella. So somebody walked past him, just ticked him with a poison-tipped umbrella, and he died. Then you know the story of the Skripals, who were also attacked similarly through poison. They were seen as renegade Russian secret agents of the service that succeeded the KGB. Now, this is the mess in which that region right now is. Putin can't let Belarus go, but he has limited ability to control it. At the same time, he can't also have dissidents coming up within his country as well. And in that process, unfortunately, hard and unfortunate decisions are taken. And somehow it seems that the life of a human being is not worth that much, especially if it is the life of a dissident. If you look at Belarus now, the Lukashenko actually claims that he got 80% of the vote. He was quite unpopular. So his opponent, who is a 37-year-old woman, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, she refuses to accept it. And EU, US, everybody refuses to accept this election. And that is what is leading to this They tried to put down these protests very brutally, but it has not worked. You can see pictures of lot of people, essentially young people, on the main squares of Minsk. So that place is now in the ferment. Everything is linked up with Putin and Russia.